I was surprised to hear that you had not voted until 2020, until the 2020 presidential election. So you voted for the first time.
Yep.
Now it's a little bit over 2 years. You're running for president. That's a pretty big jump to just go from voting now 2.5 years later to run.
I mean, the reality is most young people in this country don't vote because they're not excited by the candidates that they see. And in my 20s, I was much the same way. Something changed for me when I became a father in 2020. That's when my first son was born. It just changed my perspective to say that I'm not just going to passively sit aside and just because I'm not excited by other candidates, I'm not going to be engaged. I stepped down from my job as a biotech CEO. I started writing extensively. I wrote 3 books in the last 2 years as well. So that's also not something that usually happens over a 2-year period, but I've become obsessed with reviving our national identity because if I was to go back and do it again, absolutely, I would want to be more engaged in my 20s as a citizen. But I also think I have the best understanding of how to reach that next generation. And frankly, we're already doing it in this campaign. Most of our supporters are young people. Most of our donors are first-time ever donors. 30% of them, first time they've ever donated to a Republican was their donation to me. Normally that's 2% in a campaign. So in many ways, it's my responsibility. I feel that responsibility to reach young Americans because I know what it's like to be in their shoes.
Yeah.
In many ways, I still am.
One of the proposals that you put forth that has gotten the most attention is adding certain prerequisites for young people to vote, for the under 25 crowd. You know, that's a group that, as you kind of are proof of, is not as engaged as their older generation. So why do you think it's important for young people, whether it is to take the citizenship test or to have some form of service, why do you think that they need an extra step in order to be able to vote?
I think, and I can say this is first personal for me. Young people don't value something they passively inherit. We value something we have a stake in building, in knowing something about. Voting rates are rock bottom for people of age 18 to 25. Personally, I think every 18-year-old should have to pass the same test that an immigrant has to pass in order to become a citizen of this country. And you know what? If I had been asked to pass that test, absolutely I would have done it, and absolutely I would have voted. So I think voting rates will skyrocket in this country amongst young people after we actually make it mean something. But right now, everyone's just going through the motions. We have to fill that hunger for purpose and meaning with the vision of what it actually means to be a citizen of this country. That's what I'm looking to deliver.
I think some people watching are going to hear that and think, well, young people also tend to vote democratically, at least in the past few elections.
The very few that vote do.
Yes.
That's right.
Does that have anything to do with this proposal?
No, actually. I happen to be running as a Republican, but I told the audience upstairs the same thing. I could care less for partisan distinctions between Republican and Democrat. What I care about is whether or not we are pro-American. Do we stand for the ideals that this country was founded on? Do we believe in those ideals? Or do we wish to apologize for a nation founded on those ideals? That's the real distinction in American politics today. And I stand on the pro-American side much more than I do on some Republican or Democrat side.
And now you talk a lot about being the first Republican millennial to be running. Of course, we had a couple millennials on the Democratic side last time. But it's interesting, a lot of your policies don't necessarily line up where millennial politics are. I'm thinking about, Harvard Youth Survey, which was out this spring, 63%, and this is the 18 to 29% crowd, want stricter gun laws. About half of the country, half of those younger people want more regulation on climate producing, coal producing companies, even if it comes at the expense of the economy. And so I'm interested just kind of how your generation has, being a 37 going on 38-year-old, how has that influenced your politics? Because it seems to be different than where a lot of people your age are right now.
I think it's less about policy and more about style. My style is authenticity, open book. I show up. We go to college campuses across the country, including in New Hampshire where we are today. I'll talk to the far left, the far right, it doesn't matter. We show up. And so I believe in free speech and open debate. When I have a protester at my event last night, we bring her to the front and give her a microphone rather than kicking them out. And so I think that as it relates to young people, one of the things I'm seeing is that many young people don't yet know what they believe. I know how they fill out a survey, but many young people are hungry for purpose and direction and meaning and identity. And the left has been very good at filling that vision with values and visions like race and gender and sexuality and climate change. I'm offering a different vision. Individual, family, nation, God. And what I'm seeing across this country is there's an openness to an actual affirmative vision. Yes, a lot of Republicans have too long just been criticizing the hypocrisies of the other side. That doesn't inspire young people. But if we say, this is our own vision, this is what we actually stand for, now I think we're engaging people, and then especially to say that you don't have to agree with 100% of what I say. But if you know that I mean what I say 100% of the time, now I think we're actually making progress.